Welcome to video 9 in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course. It's time to talk about flute articulation, and I'm going to be your cheerleader to practice tonguing with more fluidity, comfort, and fun than ever before. Whether you're just starting from scratch and you want to learn how to practice cleaner, clearer, maybe faster articulation, or you're just looking for some new ideas, this video will be a great prompter to help you freshen up your flute articulation practice routine. A wonderful gift given to me by my high school flute teacher was the feeling that double tonguing was no big deal. Unlike so many flute students I've noticed that struggle with the comfort, execution, or even concept of double tonguing, I was fortunate enough to get an easy peasy start. She told me just to walk around double tonguing anytime I thought about it. And I did. I walked down the hallways of my high school double tonguing. I double tongued in the car. I even double tongued while I was washing my hair. I double tongued and double tongued and double tongued anytime no one was looking. Because of this early immersion practice, I always had a positive association with double tonguing. Now, don't worry if your start with articulation wasn't as positive, or even if you had kind of a weird start. We're about to talk about some user-friendly articulation practice techniques that can help shift your perspective and get you single and double tonguing with ease, flow, comfort, and confidence. When I was in beginner band, I thought snare drum players must be geniuses. I had no idea how they were moving their sticks so quickly. Imagine my surprise when I finally realized that their sticks were bouncing. Just like snare drum players utilize perpetual motion as a key component of their virtuosic execution of lightning fast technique, so can flute players utilize perpetual motion for lightning fast articulation. No matter how many tonguing tricks or tips you discover, remember to keep coming back to bouncy, buoyant, easy peasy, more than the sum of its parts, perpetual motion. To do this, when you practice fast articulated passages, start slowly with your metronome. And as long as you're still feeling bouncy and buoyant, you feel like sing-along surrender is definitely on its way, notch the tempo up just a little bit at a time. If anything feels stuck or weird, try a models and bridges practice routine with slurring, breath kicks, fluttering, singing and playing, hissing, air flute, anything that helps your tonguing feel free again and you feel like the next notched up tempo will be easy peasy. If you're still feeling stuck and weird, you may need to start back slow. Remember, whenever we're working towards fast tempos, especially with tonguing, we don't want to go faster than our comfort level. You may have to invest quite a bit of time at the slow tempos at first, but if you insist on comfort, bounce, and fun, the faster tempos will come sooner than you think. When it comes to tonguing style, finding the secret sweet spots is a combination of understanding composer articulation markings, knowing the feeling in your tonguing that matches the sounds you'd like to make, and also just including articulation in your daily practice routines for comfort, endurance, and increased facility. I've linked in the description box below this video a helpful PDF of pages 34 and 35 from my first book, The Aspiring Flutist's Practice Companion. I hope these two pages are a really helpful guide for you when it comes to understanding composer articulation markings and also experimenting with different types of tonguing. Now, do keep in mind that articulations written by Bach are pretty differently interpreted than articulation markings written by, say, Prokofiev. So always listen to professional flutists on recordings and learn from the way they interpret the articulation markings. Also, you can get articulation ideas listening to singers, string players, pianists, and other instrumentalists too. Just add a little imagination to help yourself convert your articulation inspiration listening into articulations you can play on the flute. Up next, we're going to talk a bit more about the secret sweet spots of double tonguing as we discuss what I think are two of the most important ingredients. A diphthong is a vowel with two parts to it, like in the word ice. You would think that the I was a singular vowel, but if you slow it down, I, you realize it's a diphthong. Now, as flutists, if we want streamlined, effortless tonguing, a singular upfront vowel is going to be far more helpful. In the PDF I linked below this video, I've got different vowels for you to experiment with. Now, I've taught so many high school band flute sectionals in Texas in my life, and it was always funny when we would come to this moment where I said, okay, repeat after me, tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku, and they would respond back enthusiastically, to-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku. There would always be some kind of au or eu, and I would have to coach them on singular vowels. So, singular vowels as you practice my basic double tonguing exercise, and you can use a different vowel than I'm using. Oo can be nice, but I also like ta-ka-ta, ti-ki-ti. Some people even sound great with a ti-ki-ti. Lots of experiments in your future. Pick whichever you like for now, but repeat after me. Let's have an interactive moment. Tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku. Tu-ku-tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku-tu-ku. Now let's add air to the equation. I always think of a moving walkway at the airport. You know, you might be walking along fast of your own accord, but then you get to step on one of those moving walkways and you feel like a superhero. When you practice double tonguing, the air is the moving walkway and your tongue just dances on the air. So actually, let's go back to step one and then we'll add step two. Step one. Tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku. Tu-ku-tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku-tu-ku. Now we're going to put our finger where our flute goes and add air between the sounds. See if you can hear. Step three would be to transfer the feeling to your flute. Now, if you aren't finding that you're using a singular vowel and it doesn't seem like your air is the moving walkway traveling between the articulation sounds, keep practicing steps 1 and 2 until you feel more comfortable and fluid. But next, you can transfer it to a B flat. Now, I want to get a good sound. You've seen me in previous videos. I love to have a little fluttering or singing moment to find my core, wake up the vibrations in my flute. Remember, tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku, tu-ku-tu-ku-tu, ku-tu-ku-tu-ku. Now, I'm from Texas myself, so a little diphthong sneaks into my tonguing all the time. But I'm listening carefully to the sound of the B flat, and stability, consistency, cohesiveness is the goal. So if I hear the diphthong, there will be a little fluctuation in the sound, then I practice to smooth it out. Try playing this pattern on a 2-octave B flat major scale, up and down, every single day. When you're comfortable, add in additional keys. Now, I will say it's more lip oriented with fast air as you begin lower in your range, and then as you go higher, sleepy face, sleepy jaw, maybe a breathy, messy, whooshy, poofy, slow hot air. Check in with head and neck balance. There's a temptation to get too uptight in the high register. If you'd like some more specific information on the differences in the low and the high for this exercise, you can revisit the videos on low register and high register in this course. Also, in video number 18, we're going to cover more about body mapping. For now, I hope that you'll have a tension-free, filled with bounce and perpetual motion, simple double tonguing exercise to add to your daily routine. I love incorporating little mini practice routines to clean up, spruce up, or refine the important articulated passages in my music. My favorite routines for tonguing involve some kind of combination of slurring, breath kicks where you practice without the tongue at all, fluttering, singing and playing, hissing, maybe air flute. For this little passage from Carnival of Venice, I'm going to show you a very simple 3-part routine that can help promote that perpetual motion feeling, that effortless bounce and flow. The fluttering, step 1, I'm not going to worry about articulation at all. I'm simply going to slur and flutter. Step 2, I am going to articulate with double tonguing, but I'm also going to be singing at the same time that I'm playing. Now, this takes a lot of energy, but it's wonderful for what I call clearing the pipes and getting that sense of momentum going in your double tonguing. I would rinse and repeat. There are a couple things that I want to smooth out from that first round of fluttering, singing and playing, and then double tonguing. There were a couple times I went into downward pull, so my next round would include more bobblehead, swivel neck freedom. Also, I had a couple of little air bursts that were unnecessary. So again, with each round, I'll be doing better and better, smoothing out the path of air. Feel free to invent your little mini practice routines, but always include something that paves the way for streamlined, buoyant, perpetual motion feelings when you double tongue. I am always happy to invest in micro steps and make incremental progress as I practice my tonguing. One of my favorite articulation metronome games is rotating slow, medium, and fast tempos around the practice potter's wheel by leaving the metronome on the same speed, but having the click represent first the 16th, then the 8th, then the quarter note, or whatever slow, medium, fast rhythm combo makes sense for the current musical passage. When I walk around the room and put infinity repeats on my tongued passage at the 3 different tempos, I can allow articulation ideas to come into focus organically without stressing or overanalyzing. I simply listen and feel for more clarity and comfort as I practice, letting go of the need to rush results and just letting the aha moments flow in. It's a lot more productive than you might think. So here is that passage from the Allegretto in the Godard suite, and I'm going to put my metronome on 72 for the click. And at first, it's going to represent the 16th note, then the 8th, then the quarter. Now, I already learned one of my high A's was a little tense. It wasn't in the flow. So I'm going to notice that as I switch over to the 8th. There were a couple of pitches that weren't as pingy-ringy as the others, and I'm noticing that little tension to grab with my neck muscles. So more bobblehead swivel neck freedom as I switch over to the quarter note. That was only my very first round. Imagine the increased comfort and flow and facility as you continue rotating slow, medium, and fast, all with the same metronome click. Perfectionist trap alert! If you're determined to play with clean and clear flute articulation, you might accidentally fall into the trap of trying to prove that you're doing a good job with flute tonguing, and then you might be tonguing too hard. Have you ever had that kind of explosive tongue sound, and when you listen back to the recording, it's just not as elegant as it could be? To help yourself keep your tonguing clean, clear, and naturally elegant, remember that flute articulation is related to clear speech. Anytime you're playing detective with your flute articulation, try using this funny little sentence. Tiny turtles love Taco Tuesdays. For each of the articulated T's in the sentence, notice where your tongue is touching the roof of your mouth. This is a great starting place for exploring your flute articulation as well. We'll use this funny little phrase a couple more times in this video as I give you articulation tips. But for now, say it one more time right along with me and notice that the T's are important for clarity, but the bulk of the word is not really dependent on the T's. Here we go. Tiny turtles love Taco Tuesdays. You could absolutely take away the T's at the beginning and say, Einy Ertles love Ako Oosdays, and your voice would still be clearly heard. The T's have more to do with the meaning of the sounds. The sounds you are making are not dependent on the T's. In this same way, flute articulation provides clarity, meaning, it's decorative, it's an element of style, but it's not really the way we mechanically or technically start our sound on the flute. This is another reason why practicing breath kicks or no tonguing at all is very helpful. Anytime you want to play a tongued passage especially well, practice it with no tonguing first, then add your tonguing back in an intentional sound-based way. Because the flute runs on momentum and flow, sometimes trying to improve your tonguing can cause more problems than it solves. If you try to improve your tonguing by over-analyzing your tongue position, consonants, or vowels, or try to prove that you're doing a good job, like we talked about in the perfectionist trap alert, your tongue can become heavy and stuck. By focusing on tonguing itself more than the context of momentum, flow, air, and flute tone, your flute articulation can start to become an obstacle to your practice and performance. To stay out of your head and into the music, remember to keep your articulation experiments moving and alive. Allow lots of non-judgmental repetitions anytime you are trying something new with your flute tonguing approach. Now, you may have come to this video hoping for some very specific physical tips about tonguing. And I can say that the tip of your tongue is a great place to start, and tonguing on the roof of your mouth, the same place you tongue when you say crisp T's, is another great place to start. But experiments and being open-minded about your tongue position is a thing. If you are trying to follow a strict piece of advice, but you're not really feeling comfort with it in context, that piece of advice is not serving you in this moment. So stay tuned for more ideas through the rest of the video, but try to keep a light-hearted curiosity about tongue position and how to articulate as you keep experimenting. You know I love harmonics, and they can help you with articulation too. As you're thickening those myelin sheaths and programming in smooth, clear tonguing, it's a great idea to program in comfort with air pressure as well. I'm going to show you a harmonic tonguing exercise that really emphasizes the ear training and steady air pressure components of crisply executed articulations. We'll be using a harmonic check-in fingering, a low G fingering, for D's above the staff. Now, I enjoy using increasing rhythms for all kinds of flute exercises, and you can use increasing rhythms for this exercise too. You could start with half notes, going to quarter notes, then eighth notes, but you could also add in sixteenths, even 30 seconds. I recommend using a metronome for the exercise, but I'll play without one for now so we can hear the details of my demonstration a little bit easier. My first time through the exercise, I might crack or drop a note, but it's just a diagnostic to see where the little air pressure fluctuations sneak in. Each time I try the exercise, I'll collect more data and get more in the groove. So again, low G fingering, high D for the pitch. Half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, I'll even add sixteenths. So interesting, right? I dropped one of the eighths, and then a few of the sixteenths were right on the cracking edge. I think that kind of data collection is so helpful because I could tell exactly where my air pressure wasn't steady. I'm going to try one more time and encourage you to try about 157 more times as you keep learning. I'm going to use this opportunity to share with you a little insight into how busy brain works. This is a spontaneous, unplanned little share. So I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm listening better this time because the first time I was too hyper aware of sharing the exercise with you. My awareness, believe it or not, was on you. And so that drop with the air pressure was kind of predictable. But then, funny little busy brain trap, such a good learning opportunity. As I was thinking, oh, now I'm listening better instead of focusing on you, I dropped a different eighth note that time. So as you're practicing, realize busy brain sneaks in constantly, but we're always trying to get more in the world of sound and feeling, more in the groove, more in the zone, more towards sing-along surrender. You don't ever have to feel bad for busy brain. It's just part of the data collection. It's always a great idea to collect your clues about flute articulation and any other flute playing topics. About a week into being quarantined for the pandemic, I made a video called Dr. Terri's Top 10 Double Tonguing Tips, but they apply to single tonguing as well. I've linked the video below and I hope you'll take the time to watch it. I go in depth about the tips and even have a couple more exercises for you to try. Additionally, I linked a packet to that video, and I'll link it here below as well, from a speech pathologist. It's got a lot of T and K words that you can practice. I find it to be very helpful and really interesting to practice. Let me summarize the tips from that video quickly here. Number 1, find the whoosh. When you're articulating, that whoosh through the tonguing really makes a difference. Number 2, always be on the lookout, on a quest to find that bounce, the ricochet, the perpetual motion like the snare drummers. Number 3, singular upfront vowels are the most helpful for comfort and a streamlined approach to tonguing. But number 4, the syllables you choose do and don't matter. You want them to be comfortable and streamlined, but it's mostly important for your tonguing to stay alive, not for you to get stressed out about the perfect syllable. Number 5, clear tonguing sounds and feels like clear speech. 6, clear tonguing often involves something I call breathy messy, which we are going to discuss more in the sfumato section. Number 7, core support is essential for double tonguing, single tonguing, but it may be easier than you think. Number 8, do hot and cold air experiments as you practice your articulation. Number 9, model your double tonguing after your single tonguing, and vice versa. Take the good stuff from each and bring it to both. Number 10, attitude is everything. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Of course, we need to be getting in our repetitions, practicing articulation every day during our practice sessions. I really like the simple exercise I taught you earlier, tuku-tu, kutuku, tuku-tuku-tu, kutuku-tuku, up and down 2 octaves of a B flat major scale or any key. But I also love the world's greatest double tongue exercise in Helen Blackburn's Super Duper Zen Yoga Warm-Up Packet, and I'll link her website below so you can go download that packet if you haven't already. Also, I'm about to show you an exercise that I coach my students with, but I don't have it written down anywhere. I hope you enjoy it. At the end of the epic warm-up, we're in A major and the metronome is on 60 beats per minute. I just leave the metronome on 60, but transform the click to the half note in my mind. There's 2 rounds of this double tonguing exercise. The first round has 8th notes, so 4 8th notes per half note click. The second round has 16th notes, so 2 groups of 4/16 notes per half note click. Now, as an introductory tempo, feel free to turn it down to 50, which might be a little easier. I'll narrate the exercise as we go. So I'm in A major, I'm staying in A major, but the first round is A to A, B to B, C sharp to C sharp, 3 sharps the whole time. Now, that first round was breath kicks, practicing without tonguing. So I'm feeling my core engagement. I'm getting access to that bounce, that ricochet, and then I'm going to transfer it over to actual double tonguing with 16th notes. Same patterns, but before I get to scale degree 7, I'm going to stop and tell you how we finish off this key area. But before I get to the top, we're gonna do 1, 2, 5. So in A major, tonic or scale degree 1 is A, 2 is B, and 5 is E. We're going to prepare to go on to E major. So I'll start with G sharp again. It's so fun to just keep traveling around the circle of fifths. I recommend at least 3 key areas a day, but of course you could do more. The first few days, you may just need to get the hang of the exercise. Then after you get the hang of it, take 3 days in a row before you make any judgment calls. You may start out a bit stuffy or stuck, but as you keep utilizing those breath kicks, finding the bounce, the ricochet, the perpetual motion, and paving the way for smooth double tonguing, and then transferring it over to the actual double tonguing on 16th notes, you will get more and more facility, more and more fluidity. I think after 3 days of completing at least 3 key areas for this exercise, you will feel so much better about your double tonguing. Time for this video's friendly, radical flexibility reminder. Even if you practiced perfectly pristine articulation an hour a day, every single day, you'd still need to remain radically flexible when it comes to in-the-moment articulation decisions in your performances. The first reason is because room acoustics can vary dramatically. If you're in a very ringy space, then your articulations might blend together. You may need to use a more pointed, distinctive approach, especially for repeated pitches that can accidentally just sound like one pitch blurred together if you don't listen carefully. If, on the other hand, the room that you're performing in is quite dry, you might need to bring your own ring and use a more breathy, messy approach to articulation. Conductor preferences are also very different from conductor to conductor. In orchestra or band, you may have a conductor that's just insisting on ultra sharp pointed articulation. Conversely, you may have a conductor that's asking for more length. Prepare as best you can through listening, score study, but be ready to be radically flexible. Other musicians may have completely different articulation ideas than you do, and there are going to be a lot of cases in chamber music and large ensemble music where you need to imitate the articulation length of other instrumentalists. Another reason you've just got to be radically flexible is because the weather changes all the time. I won't ramble about it, but I find there are a lot of differences on a cold winter's day as compared to a warm summer's day in the way that I feel and the access that I have to articulation. Also, My comfort level with articulation, and I've noticed it in my students as well, it can be so different depending on the level of hydration. If you're well hydrated and the internal environment of your mouth feels good, that will give you a lot more access to clear, effortless tonguing than if you're all dry. I go to great lengths sometimes. I watched this Christina Aguilera masterclass on singing in the masterclass video series, and she was talking about having your plethora of drinks. And I love that tip. I often have a water, sparkling water. Sometimes I even have a hot coffee and a cold coffee. I think 3 or 4 is my max. But just having drinks around you so that the internal environment of your mouth feels good, it can make your practicing articulation feel much better too. Finally, another reason to be radically flexible with your articulation is that you may be super warmed up when you're practicing, or maybe it was a really busy day and you didn't get to play your flute very much, but now here you are playing a piece with tonguing in it. Remember that you're going to have different access levels based on how warmed up you are, how hydrated you are, the weather, what the other musicians are doing, what the conductor wants, what the room acoustics are. Radically flexible is the way to go with articulation and really any flute playing skill. Here are 2 last tonguing tips for our articulation video, and they're in the sfumato section because you may need that tension of opposites mentality to wrap your mind around them. Crispy whispers, so helpful for elegant, crisp articulation. And even though articulation that's clear is very much related to clear speech, you may need to add the crisp. Think of a potato chip, how crunchy it is, and make your T's crispy like this. Remember our fun sentence? Tiny turtles love Taco Tuesdays. T, 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 t. That little breath behind it adds the light crisp on the T. Now, some flutists really enjoy using D and G, dugga dugga dugga, dugu dugu dugu. I find that those can be handy for specific musical contexts. Sometimes legato moments could benefit from a softer type of tongue. Or, if you don't want it to be too crisp for some reason, dugga 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 or dugu 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 could be handy. But in general, the flutists that I encounter that use this as their home base tonguing are often kind of heavy tonguers and rely on their tongue to start their pitches rather than the path of air and their internal support. So if you are a DG, dugu 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 type of tonguer, I really recommend that you at least give tuku 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 or tika 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 or whatever other vowel combo with T and K you like a chance. There is an elegance and a crispness you can access that can really help your articulation pop in an elegant way, especially in a ringy room, that separation between pitches that we need sometimes for our articulation to make sense and for us to get as close as possible to what the composer has indicated on the page. The other tip I'd like to give you is breathy messy. You've heard me say it a few times, and if you go and watch that top 10 double tonguing tips that I linked below, you'll hear how I incorporate the breathy messy. But I just want to plug this tip one more time, because if you try to double tongue where the tongue is doing most of the work, you're going to get stuck, you're going to lose momentum. So breathy messy, I think of Marilyn Monroe, like happy birthday, that very whispery, breathy, messy, I think it's called aspirating the air behind the tongue. That can cushion your approach to articulation and facilitate the in-betweens. If you don't understand it or you don't believe me, just give it a try. When you're doing either of the exercises I described in this video or working on the world's greatest double tongue exercise from Helen's packet, if you're getting stuck at all or you feel like your tongue is heavy, infuse your playing with that whoosh, that breathy messiness. And especially if you listen back to a recording, you'll notice that ironically, or sort of tension of oppositely, that what feels messy to you ends up sounding clear. This is the author's note that's included in the 2-page PDF that I linked for you below this video. I highly recommend that you download it. It's got consonant and vowel combinations you can try. It also has a concise guide of typical articulation markings that you see in music, just to cut through any of the mystery. But I do want to read this author's note because I think sometimes articulation can be stress-inducing, or for other types of students, they can just ignore it. I know for many years, I didn't have a very clear idea of even how to work on it. So here's the author's note. As a student, many flute fundamentals, especially vibrato and articulation, were mysterious and confusing to me. I tried my best to listen to the advice of teachers and conductors, but I still had trouble. If you can identify, take heart. Explore the ideas and suggestions in this packet, listen to great musicians, and experiment to find your flute fundamental sweet spots. As long as you strive to play clearly, beautifully, and with respect for the composer's intentions as best you understand them, you are on the right articulation path. If you'd like to check out my other resources, visit fluteforyou.com. There you'll find my other 3 books, some additional online courses, and a really cool piece I wrote called Scarborough Fantasy, Theme and Soulful Variations for Solo Flute. There is an awesome double tonguing section in Scarborough Fantasy. Also visit my website, practicejunkie.com, for some free PDFs. Head over to miyazawa.com to look at the beautiful Miyazawa flutes. I love my Miyazawa. And also, I'm the professor at UMKC Conservatory. If you or another wonderful flutist you know is interested in studying with me here at the conservatory, send me an email, t.sanchez@umkc.edu. I always offer a complimentary lesson for anyone who's going to be auditioning.